What year is it? 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 This is 52 Pickup.
Hello, and welcome to 52 Pickup, a podcast about the greatest comic book you've never heard of. Yes.
Nailed it.
I'm Gita. As always, that's who I am, that's who I will be, that's who I always have been. And I'm joined by professional comic books expert, Alex Jaffe. Alex
Jaffe here, immensely proud that Gita Jackson nailed our intro on the first try.
I can't believe it, truly, because I just went on my honeymoon and I haven't said it in many weeks. And usually when we're recording these back to back, I can never remember it for whatever reason. I always say it's the greatest podcast you've never heard of, but you've heard of this podcast. If you're listening to it, you've heard of it. So that's not
this
true.
Might be the first episode they picked up.
A weird one,
which is weird.
Pick. Yeah, go back to the beginning.
Yeah, this is a podcast about a comic book we cover sequentially. Don't start with number 19.
That's silly.
You don't have to go to 0, but 1 would be nice. I get the appeal of a prime number. I'm with you there if you're one of those. But I guess you would start with issue 2 then. I don't know why you would start on 19.
Yeah, 19. It's just going to be confusing for you. Okay.
Yeah.
Anyway, how are you, Alex?
Me, I'm delightful. I'm delicious.
As always.
I'm delovely.
Delectable delickables.
That's me all over.
This fucking commercial for cat frisky delickables all the time, and it doesn't make any sense to me. It's just this girl feeding cat treats to her cat and being like, delightfully delectable delickables. And this other lady laughs into her salad. It's like, what does that mean? That doesn't make me want to give this shit to my cat. Come on.
Yeah, I don't know. Maybe there's some kind of market research on how toxoplasmosis morphs people's brains so that they find that to be an appealing commercial.
They just like wordplay and puns more.
Yeah. While it motivates you to crawl onto leaves so that predators can eat you and then defecate you so that cats can sift through them.
Yep.
That's how toxoplasmosis works. And that's what this podcast is about. This podcast is about...
It's a podcast about how I love my cat and would die for her. And I've been conditioned to do this via the toxic chemicals in her pee.
Yeah.
No, it's a podcast about 52, which is an incredibly good comic book that we've been talking about for like 20 episodes. It's a good
comic. They're good comics, Brent.
They're good comics, right. Brent. Okay.
Yeah, this issue, though.
There's some
stuff going on.
Oh my God. This issue, when I read it, I was screaming, crying, throwing up, during the original run, as the kids say nowadays. It's got some revelations, and I really love where they took the story from here. At this particular storyline that we spend most of the issue talking about. Yeah.
I will say this is 100% all Grant Morrison. The big twist of this issue, which turns out to be the big twist of 52 as a whole, perhaps, that all comes from Morrison going, we really don't want to do another the timeline is screwed up story. There must be something else going on here because we don't want to be the 10,000th people who did that. So Morrison comes up with a different approach and everyone quickly adapts to it. And it's something that they've been sprinkling clues towards in the entire series. And what's amazing about it is that I've been going through the 2006 message boards throughout this whole series to see how people were reacting. Basically, nobody called this, even though all of the clues are right there.
I know. I remember when this hit Scans Daily, and it was like people were... It wasn't just that they weren't like furious. They really felt like this comic got them. And then people started going back in time and like looking at the other issues and being like, I don't know when they changed gears for this to be the plot, but it seems like they really were playing like Mr. Policeman. You could have figured it out. I gave you all the clues.
Yeah, exactly. It was the snowman from the very beginning. It's so rare for comics to do that.
Usually readers are just savvy enough about the mechanics of how comic books work that you can't do this to them anymore. But this is like the rare marvel of 52, right? Like getting all of these obsessives in the same room means that they could zig where they would have zagged normally.
Right. Like this issue happens a couple years after maybe the biggest mystery plot in DC's history, Batman Hush, where they have Hush show up as this new villain who's wrapped in bandages. And it was like, well, who's this Hush guy? And literally from the second issue, everyone's like, oh, it's the new character, Tommy Elliott, you just introduced.
Yeah.
And Jeff Loeb spends the next 10 months going, no, it's not. And then it's just him.
Yeah. Yeah, there's something... It's different from the Westworld problem, I would say. Are you familiar with the Westworld problem?
I only watched season 1.
Okay, I also only watched season 1. Or I tried to watch season 2, and then I kept falling asleep in the middle of episodes. So I was like, maybe not for me. But I watched season 1 after it came out, and I remember thinking like, oh, that was some pretty good television. I don't know why people were saying it was like revolutionary, best television show ever. And it's because people clocked the twist of Westworld very quickly, and then they were proven right. But because they were proven right, the writers were like, we'll make it even more twisty next season.
Yeah.
And there's like, the thing that makes that first season of television so satisfying isn't that it's so twisty and turdy and you don't know what's going to happen next, is that things happen logically and it's easy to figure out because that would be a satisfying conclusion to the story, right? Like they eventually the viewers of the show realized that there were two different segments of the show and they're not happening concurrently. One is happening in the past and one is happening in the present. And once they figured that out, like a lot of the mysteries of that first season got unlocked. And the reaction to that being like, well, we'll make it harder to figure out. That's not what readers want. The Thomas Elliott thing was unsatisfying because like it's obviously that guy. You know?
Yeah.
They couldn't come up with a way to make the unraveling of that mystery satisfying because he just invented a new man. It's like, obviously, we know how comic books work. It's the new character, not the legacy characters that DC doesn't want to sully, you know? Whereas with Westworld, it's like, that was a satisfying mystery, even though it was easy to figure out because it makes sense and they don't have to compete with corporate interests in these characters.
We've talked before on the show about the whole debacle of Armageddon 2001, where everyone called that the secret villain was Captain Atom, so they changed it to Hawk at the last minute, which just pissed everybody off.
Just don't do it. Like, commit and don't say, like, don't treat the audience like they're stupid. That's the other Thomas Elliott thing. Why figuring that out right away and then having Jeff Loeb being like, no? Like, that was frustrating because it's like, we know, either lean into it or just, like, admit that you got caught. Like, it's fine. It's absolutely fine. Mysteries are satisfying when you can figure them out from clues in the text. It's great. That's, like, a fun thing to do.
Yeah.
That's why people like reading mystery stories.
Right. I've spoken about the Bendis formula, that you want about 15% of people reading to get it, because if nobody gets it, it was too obscure.
Yes.
And if everyone gets it, it was too obvious.
Yes, and I think the Westworld problem was honestly like there were too many people that were too actively engaged and they did not know how many people were going to be actively engaged in figuring out the mystery. And their response to that was to cater to those people, but no, that realistically, that was still 15% of the audience.
Yeah. Absolutely. The regular normie watching Westworld was not plugged into Twitter each week, like splicing all the Maggie Simpson killed Mr. Burns clues.
Yeah, exactly. Yeah. God, what a good episode of The Simpsons that is. That's so good.
I have a whole story about that I'll tell another time. But
all right.
For now, I don't want to talk about that. I want to talk talent. This issue features the debut on 52 of Pat Oliff and Drew Garassi Pat Olliffe is mainly a Marvel guy, known for working on Spider-Man and Spider-Girl in the 90s. After this, he worked on the follow-up to 52, a miniseries called 52 Aftermath, 4 Horsemen, where breakdown artist Keith Giffen took over as writer. Honestly, I think it's a little underrated. Maybe we'll talk about it much later, once we have an idea of what the 4 Horsemen are. And Drew Garassi, the inker, he's inked basically everything over many decades, including the very first issues of Birds of Prey. So he's been around. And here on the cover, we have what might be arguably J.G. Jones' laziest work.
Yeah, not a lot going on here. JG, we love you. Seriously.
Yeah, we love you so much. Come on the show.
Please. I'd love to talk to you about your process for the covers. But the process for this one seemed to be give my hand a break.
Yeah. I'm doing one of these every week.
Like, I need to have an easy layup every once in a while. It's not eye-catching. It doesn't even follow the sort of magazine, sort of like weekly magazine sort of format that they were doing for a while. It truly is just a drawing of Booster Gold.
Or someone who appears to be Booster Gold. The one neat artistic touch is that I like how he's carrying Skeets and running with him like he's the figure on the Heisman Trophy.
Yeah, I do like that.
And like we've got these many dates floating around his head, like it maybe suggests that he's running past them like yard lines on a football field. Maybe I'm projecting a little too much onto that. Maybe if they went with something other than a gray gradient background, that would convey that a little better. Gradient
background is what kills me, honestly.
Yeah.
That's the one that's like,
that's not good.
Go girl, give me nothing. It's like really what it is. It is Dua Lipa doing that weird shoulder dance. Like, that's what it is.
Yes. That's absolutely it.
The actual drawing of the figure on this page is beautiful as always.
Of course. J.G. Jones is incapable of doing bad figure work.
No, absolutely. The pose is beautiful. The suggestion of motion is beautiful. I like the positioning of his feet like so much because you can see exactly what point in the run he is. He had to have either studied this from the Heisman Trophy or studied it from footage of football. It looks great. It's just like sincerely, it's also just a bunch of numbers in the impact font in varying colors of blue.
Yeah, it's kind of how we open the show. It's issue 19 already. You know what's up. Open up this issue. We'll figure out what's going on together. Maybe the appeal is the fact that it's Booster Gold on the cover, despite the fact that we literally saw him die a few weeks ago.
Probably.
So what's going on there?
Probably. But we're about to find out.
We're about to find out. Shit. We open with maybe my favorite image in the whole comic, which is Skeets staring at a gold football trophy. Kind of seeing his mirror visual image there.
Does he know? I didn't even put that together. That's so funny, though.
It's great. Absolute props to whoever scripted this scene, or if it's Pat Olliffe's invention. Just, I love how this opens. It's a trophy for Daniel John Carter, who is a Spartans football player. For the Manchester, Ohio Spartans, the 21st century ancestor to Booster Gold we met at the funeral last week. Skeets has some kind of grand destiny in mind for him, and he seems to be very much the same character as Booster. He's reliving his football glory days. His bills are past due. He is kind of a big loser. Skeets is soaking this all in when Daniel shows up and aims a shotgun at him, and we get our title drop. History repeats.
God, wonder what that's referring to.
I think we'll find out.
I just want to say quickly, I love dirtbag Daniel John Carter.
Yeah, he's great.
I love him. I love this. I love the character of a normal man they've introduced into all of this. It feels very in the spirit of what Morrison has always been best at, which is taking things from the high level mythic view and taking them down to the street level, just like average random person view, really trying to think of how to embody the universe. Like they're in the world of DC, not everyone is Clark Kent. And like not everyone is even Lois Lane. Not everyone's even Jimmy, you know? Like people are washed up ex-football stars.
Yeah, and now the 5th best term life salesman out of 6.
The humor is really humoring in this episode. The comedy is giving laughter. I also love how he's chugging a beer.
It's great classic Keith Giffen shit.
It's so exactly.
It's the kind of stuff you expect a booster type to get up to from the classic JLI years.
Yes, which is, again, where a lot of people got into the character of Booster Gold, is him as a comedy character. Even if you only got into him through Justice League Unlimited, you probably only know him as a comedy character also. A lot of the stuff that they go through here with Daniel John Carter does seem to be bringing people up to speed on the Booster Gold backstory, which I was very familiar with when I read 52, but I know that Booster Gold has always kind of been a fringe figure, so I'm assuming that they felt like they needed to bring in that backstory to the main text.
Oh yeah, this is the first time we're really getting it explained to us in the body of 52, which is necessary at this point. Skeets is offering Daniel a deal to potentially take Booster's place to finish some plan he has going on, which is when we learn that Daniel is already signed up for Lex Luthor's Everyman project, which makes sense considering he's exactly the sort of person this project exists for.
Yeah, this is a guy who watches Friday Night Lights and cries. Like,
yes.
You know?
Gita, do you mean anyone who's ever watched Friday Night Lights?
You know what? Fair point. But this one is like a more personal crying, not even related to what the characters are doing on the show.
It's an it-me cry.
Yeah, exactly.
Yeah.
Sometimes you watch something, there's a song on the new Charli XCX album where she talks about getting self-conscious at parties, and I'm like, girl, I understand. So I also go to the bathroom and think about how much I suck when I go to a party.
I too am a brat.
I am! It is me!
So Skeets offers Daniel a choice. Either take your chance in this everyman lottery where you will lose because you are a loser at life, or take the definite shot I am giving you. And he leaves it hanging there. And then we go to space.
Then we go to space, where the space heroes are catching up with what the fuck is going on with Lobo. I will say something about Dan, what's his name? Who drew it today? Devin? No. Drew Garrissey. That's his name. The way that he draws Animal Man makes him look like Glenn Powell. And I had the thought, Glenn Powell would actually kind of slay in an Animal Man movie.
Oh, he'd be great.
He looks like a guy that doesn't know why the fuck this is happening to him.
Yeah.
That's
exactly. I can imagine him turning at the camera, just being horrified.
Yeah. I can see it on his face. There's something that is he's a very good comedian, and I think that his face work is really like his expressions are a lot of what makes him a good and entertaining actor to watch. But also he's hot, but not so hot that you could not picture this man being like a guy going to Home Depot because he needs to grab a new screwdriver so he can fix a curtain rod for his wife. You know?
Yeah. I feel like it's really important to impress that Animal Man does not break the fourth wall in the same way that Deadpool breaks the fourth wall, where Deadpool is in on the joke with you. Whereas when Animal Man sees you, it's an existential dread. Yeah,
it's like if you personally turned your head and saw a whole bunch of people watching you from far away. That's the feeling.
Oh, that was a very common fear I had when I was a kid, that there were a bunch of people watching me literally right behind me at all times.
That's so scary, but that feels very neurodivergent. I had a fear that I was in the Matrix because I was like, how would I know? How would I know?
How would you know?
I wouldn't!
I do want to point out that Corey is wearing Animal Man's shirt here because Lobo tore off her costume the last time we saw her.
It's a cute look for her, though. I like the mock neck.
She's rocking it.
Absolutely. Her hair is also really limp, which I think curly girls know. If you have curly hair, you know that this happens if you aren't able to shower for a while. Every time you see me, Alex, in a ponytail, it's because I haven't been able to shower for a while and my hair is just not curly anymore.
No judgment.
Thank you, friend. Yes. But this is a fun example of when Morrison's just feeling themselves and they are letting their freak flag fly. Part of their comic book writing philosophy is thinking like, how can I make you feel like a child where you were reading these narratives and not understanding them because you didn't understand how narratives work. And a lot of that is like throwing a bunch of stuff that is happening extraneous to these characters onto the screen and then having them navigate that, but leaving a lot of it unexplained. So we are on this alien planet. They're getting some showers, but also they're being talked to by a sentient dolphin.
Yeah. Space dolphins have been part of the Lobo mythology since the 80s when Keith Giffen made him a comedy character in JLI. It's always been kind of his one endearing quality, that like he has absolute disregard for all life in the universe except this one weird species of spacefaring dolphins. So obviously if Morrison is going to draw on Lobo's come to God moment, he's going to involve some of those in his life.
Absolutely. Feels like something Morrison would come up with by themselves. But
right.
It's just convenient that it's like part of the established lore. I know dolphins in Animal Man were also portrayed as like uniquely intelligent and friendly and kind, even though that's not true. Dolphins are kind of assholes.
Yeah.
But they are uniquely intelligent. They're not kind.
All life, once it gets to a certain level of sentience, becomes kind of a jerk.
Once you can figure out the difference between the self and the other, you understand how to bully. You know?
Yes! That's like the second evolutionary step. I learned that from 2001: A Space Odyssey.
Exactly. No, you're feeling what I'm feeling here. It's like in groups and out groups can only exist without the conception of the self. So once you have that, you can be mean. But I do love all the design of these weeping spacefaring people and this big chapel and the level of squalor that they live in. It feels very lived in space, which I know is also like something that Morrison's very into. Mm-hmm. This does feel like this whole scene, even though you got Lobo in the mix, it does feel very Morrison also. Yeah.
We get this kind of joyous shower scene where everybody's getting to kind of like relax for the first time in 20 weeks.
Yeah. Happy for them. I'm happy for Corey's hair, honestly. Immediately, like, the person, Drew understood, like, it's limp in one panel, and then the next panel when she gets a shower, it's buoyant and shiny again.
Yeah, absolutely.
I love that little detail.
That's all she needed.
Yeah, absolutely. Yeah. This is, I guess, around the time when comic book artists started thinking, like, maybe we should look at fashion magazines and understand what women wear.
Yeah, maybe that happened in the middle of 52.
That meeting would have been incredibly, to be a fly on the wall in a room when men realized that they had to look at an issue of Vogue to draw a female character. But yes, they are called into and must walk through throngs of destitute alien refugees before they're led into a chapel where they meet Lobo, who is dressed up as a Space Pope.
He's dressed as the Space Pope. It's Space Pope Lobo. It's clearly the first image that Grant Morrison had for this whole arc in their mind once they knew they had to incorporate Lobo. And they're like, well, let's build the rest of this story around showing Lobo doing exactly this. And I don't blame him for it. Sometimes you got to start with an image.
It makes sense. Like, why would you not want to do this? Also, like, think about how comic books work. You would, as a writer and an artist, can you imagine being at a con and getting to sign an issue of this comic book from someone cosplaying as Space Pope Lobo?
Oh my God, yeah.
Right? It would make you feel so cool. So you would have to write this into the issue.
Right. Just to make your life a little bit cooler.
Exactly.
For all the conventions you're forced to go to. We get this this line of supplicants like it's one of the filler Game of Thrones episodes.
Yep.
Trying to get some attention to their fallow crops or whatever. And and this like praying mantis is supplicating, trying to get him to cast the splendid eye our way. And Lobo gets really pissed that he mentioned the eye. That's a little clue.
We also, in the background of all these conversations, Animal Man keeps talking about how he finds it really overwhelming to be on this planet because so many different alien species are speaking to his ability to commune with and transform into animals.
Yeah.
And he's like getting mental overload, essentially.
Right. Especially after being in the bleak lifelessness of space all this time.
So not only it's like having your sense of smell come back, and it's all the weirdest smells you've ever smelled.
So Lobo is professing that he's given up his murderous ways. He's given up his drinking and smoking and womanizing for some reason we don't know. But he's apparently come to God. How that happened, the comic is keeping close to its chest right now. But there's some kind of big problem in the universe that there's this big new bad guy in an unexplored sector of space who's really taken advantage of untold thousands of alien civilizations, and they're all kind of coming to Lobo for help. And that's what he's kind of enlisting these heroes to help him with, kind of teasing them with the fact that Devilance the Pursuer, the new god who was pursuing them through the early part of the series, was doing that under contract of this new mysterious figure, which is an interesting concept in itself, because why would a god become a bounty hunter, which is something
exactly
Animal Man and Adam Strange really want to know. It's a big mystery.
Lobo also mentions that the alien refugees that they've sort of walked through, all the people that are coming to Lobo in supplication, they've also had their homeworlds destroyed by this force that put the bounty on them.
Yeah. We get a mysterious over-the-shoulder look at this figure. We don't get a name or anything, but this is indeed the figure who's been teased in promotional material up to this point, of a new cosmic villain who will make Darkseid pale in comparison. I think that's a direct quote from the editorial at the time.
It also looks a little bit like a scrap design concept for the Fae villains in Seven Soldiers of Victory.
Yeah, absolutely. 100%.
I feel like in a different draft, Morrison was like, so can I connect this to Seven Soldiers? And they were like, no, come on, that's too many of your things, Morrison. Yeah.
We've got this last shot as Lobo teases them with the information of this intergalactic conqueror, of him finally taking out the eye that was alluded to earlier. It's a big old giant eyeball with a green iris. And
it's like a supernaturally green iris too, and it's like glowing. I wonder what that means.
Right. Legion of Superheroes fans will recognize this as the Emerald Eye of Ekron, the signature weapon of the Emerald Empress, who was a member of the Fearsome Five, the Fatal Five. Fearsome Five is a different team. The Fatal Five, who are arch enemies of the Legion of Superheroes. However, I saw a lot of really interesting guesses at the time that, like, hey, remember when Alan Scott lost an eye and, like, a lot of people, like, changed sizes? What if this is what happened to that? And
that's such a good theory.
It's such a good theory, and I kind of wish that's what they went with. But they ended up taking it in a different direction. Maybe they considered it at some point, but couldn't make it fit with, like, the rest of the Legion mythology. I know Mark Waid was a really big stickler for Legion particulars at the time, but all of this makes me really disappointed that we never got a Grant Morrison Legion run, because I feel like they would really knock that particular.
They would have gotten so freaky with it. They would have gotten so weird, and it would have been great. We would have gotten at least a lot of very cool redesigns and, like, power applications for those characters. Can you imagine them doing Brainiac 5?
Oh my God. You're right.
Wouldn't that be so good?
Like, a question I get all the time is, like, how do we make the Legion of Superheroes work now that it's not the Silver Age anymore? And I think you just got to get real weird with it.
You gotta go to the same place of zaniness as when they created Matter Eater Lad. Like, you just have to, you know? Yes. There's a couple writers I could think who could do it. Like, Kieran Gillen could probably figure it out. Absolutely. They're clearly doing their own creator-owned and mostly Marvel stuff. I just think they just finished doing their X-Men run, so they probably don't want to hop on another big proprietary comic book anytime soon. Gillen could do it. Hickman would do a Hickman thing, you know. It would be a lot of infographics, whatever.
Hickman wanted to do a Legion run for a long time, but he ended up using those concepts on X-Men instead.
Fair enough. I mean, they did a really good job on X-Men, not mad about it. I still got to read those ideas, but I have a soft spot for the Legion. I really do. I remember I was going through all of the Supergirl runs, and I ended up reading one of the more contemporary. Supergirl is flashed into the future and ends up with the Legion.
That's the Mark Waid run, yeah.
Yeah, I really liked it a lot.
It's cool.
Yeah, and it's just, they're so inconsistent. It's so inconsistent to try to find a good Legion run because people don't know what to do with them. And it's unfortunate because really it's just a CW show. And that's what Mark Waid got so right.
You know, it's funny you say that because Brainiac 5 is my favorite character on the CW Supergirl show. It's just,
that's so funny.
It's really fun to see him Aspergersing around once they had to write out their original nerd.
You know, I think that's incredible neurodivergent representation.
Yeah. I'm all for it.
Absolutely.
He gets the first trans superhero as his girlfriend. It's really cool.
Perfect. We love that.
Yeah.
Listen, guy who's so smart that he realizes he shouldn't be evil because of his autism is an incredible character trait.
What a breakthrough. It took 1,000 years.
Like, well, I feel like I should be doing evil deeds, but instead I'm just going to play with trans.
Now we go to Metropolis, where we see Weather Wizard, the Flash villain, trying to fuck stuff up, despite the fact that there are documented superheroes in Metropolis right now, and all of the Flashes are gone. So why aren't you in Central City right now?
This scene is so funny to me, though, because the content here also pure Morrison. This is a random thing that will never be explained. It appears that Weather Wizard is causing a weather event inside a courtroom because he's being charged with bank fraud.
If you see the bank manager, give him a message from the Weather Wizard.
Tell him I warned him not to take the witness stand. Like, come on. Were you writing bad checks, dude?
Yeah. So Supernova, our newest Metropolis superhero, swoops in with an unexpected assist from a golden lasso.
Who is this? Can you hear the guitar riff in your head right now? I can't do it, but I can hear it. It is Cassandra Sandsmark, the girl that's the most down bad in the world.
The saddest girl in the DC universe.
Oh,
who's
man.
just like absolutely 100% convinced that Supernova is the resurrected Connor Kent.
I have this theory of taxonomy of fictional characters. So you can really break up fictional characters into which ones are Charli girls and which ones are Taylor Swift girls. Cassandra, Taylor Swift. Absolutely.
Oh, sure.
She's crying in her room listening to You Belong With Me every day.
And you know we've got bad blood.
Exactly. That's how she feels about the rest of Young Justice.
Yeah, exactly. It's not great. Stephanie Brown is a Charli girl.
Absolutely.
We established this.
She's bumping that, bumping that, bumping that, bumping that.
Yeah.
Her original superhero name was Spoiler, and she became a superhero out of spite. That's Charli XEX shit. She's going 100%. Spring breakers all over Gotham.
Yeah. Anyway, she's absolutely convinced that Supernova is her dead boyfriend, and Supernova has my favorite line in the entire issue: "Respect my personal space, please." And he flies away.
It's so funny. Oh my god, she's doing like sad white girl eyes at him.
Yeah.
Like, I will, Con-El. Girl.
And there's an ad for Skeetles candy behind her.
That's really cute, though. I'm glad Skeet got his own. He's got his own brand deal in the mix.
Yeah. Booster's popularity has been tanking, but Skeet's his toys are still coming off the shelf.
He's just a football.
He's just a football. Not much to articulate.
He manages to keep his brand deals because parents keeps accidentally getting a Skeet figurine when they try to get a football.
Yeah. Tell me you wouldn't get one of those like Nerf footballs, but it was the dimensions and shape and color of Skeet's.
I would buy that immediately. Warner Brothers.
I would toss that around.
Absolutely, 100%.
DC, if you're listening, A, my opinions do not reflect that of my employers. But B, maybe consider making that merch.
C, let me write a Lois Lane comic.
Yeah. D, please CC. It would be good, I promise. I promise it would be really good.
Absolutely. I have got a great idea that you will be able to use in perpetuity. I'm not going to burn Cass right now. I just have to write the proposal. Anyway, moving on to the next page, we are now meeting back up with Daniel John Carter and Skeets. And where are they? They're in Arizona.
Yeah, they're back at Rip Hunter's bunker to finish what they started. Last time when Skeets had to manually keep the vault door open for Booster so he could poke around, Skeets apparently didn't get to look inside himself. So this time he's linked Daniel Carter's visor, because he's given him Booster's visor, making him the spitting image of Booster. He's apparently given him a haircut too. The mullet's gone. So he just looks exactly like him. And this time, whatever Daniel sees, Skeets will see as well. And that's why, ostensibly, he's setting him into the vault. And We see our old friend the Blackboard. We see the "it's all his fault" graffiti. It's basically any scene in an Annapurna game where you're just like investigating everything around you in an empty room to figure out what the clues are.
Yep. This is a walking simulator portion of the comic. But if you look closely, the things that he's examining in this room, it's not necessarily the Blackboard. It's all these pictures with arrows. The arrows that we previously believed were pointing at Booster Gold. Skeet seems to think that they are pointing at something else.
Yeah. Upon closer examination of these arrows, they're not pointing directly at Booster. They're pointing slightly to the left of Booster. And this is not something that changed for this issue. If you go back to the original scene where this showed up, all the arrows are pointing at Skeets.
Yeah.
And Daniel asks aloud, wait, whose fault?
And then Skeet says, he knows.
He knows.
God, it's such a great reveal. I love this. This makes me so happy to read. I love this reveal because Skeets is so unassuming. He is such a little sycophant, you know? Like, he's always talking.
He's voiced by Billy West in the cartoon. He can't be a bad guy.
No, but that's why it's perfect to have this twist, right? He's so ominous all throughout this issue. Yeah. But you can trick yourself into thinking that it's because maybe it's Daniel John Carter who's like something you can the misdirect works in so many different ways because you would never expect Skeets. Like it's like saying the Butler did it. It's like, oh, that would be dumb. You know? Right. But the Butler did fucking do it this time.
You know what it reminds me? I've often accused Grant Morrison of chasing Alan Moore's star. And this reminds me a lot of Alan Moore's big reveal in Whatever Happened to the Man of Tomorrow, where it turns out goofy little Mr. Mxyzptlk has been manipulating all the malicious stuff happening to Superman for this grand finale, that he's decided to be evil, and now there's nothing Superman can do about it. And it's like the last person you would expect, but the worst person it could possibly be. That's kind of what Morrison is doing with Skeets here.
Yeah, because it is the worst person it could possibly be. Because Skeets is technology from far, far, far in the future.
Yeah, the 25th century.
He has complete knowledge of history, and he can use that knowledge maliciously.
And he uses that to open up a time vortex and trap Daniel Carter in it until 1,000,000 years in the future, so he can't tell anybody what he's just figured out.
I love the illustration of Daniel John Carter being sucked into that vortex. It's him saying no recursively, essentially, and it's just him getting smaller and smaller and smaller, saying no, 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 no,
History
as
repeats.
He's being sucked into it. Yeah, it's so good.
And Skeets basically leaves him there in that loop, and that's kind of where we get our opening image of Daniel Carter in the booster uniform running below all those dates, that he's stuck in this sort of weird time loop. Yeah. And Skeets just hums his way out of there, saying, "You've served your purpose." He knows. But who's the he? Is it Daniel or is it someone else? Is he talking about Rip Hunter? Does Rip Hunter know? Is that a problem for him? Is that something Skeets is going to figure out? What is Skeets up to? What's his whole deal? What's his big plan here? What's he doing? Why has he been misdirecting Booster?
Who is driving?
Yeah.
Skeets is driving? But how can that be?
It's the kind of reveal that raises a lot more questions than it answers. And that's good for week 19 in a 52-issue series.
Absolutely. I also want to point out in the collected edition of 52, right after this, they show some cover options that J.G. Jones went through. And apparently the big numbers one was one of the sketches, and I guess they went with that. But all of these other options are so much better. They have Booster actually in uniform doing being tackled by a bunch of defenders in a football game, leaping over the defenders, and then another one which is more minimalistic where it's just a series of numbers circling around him. All of those would have communicated what they're trying to communicate better than what they ended up with.
Yeah, I don't know what happened here.
It must have just been, I need an easy one. I feel like it has to be that.
Give me a break, dude. Yeah. Honestly, Jones has earned it. Like, he's creating a work of art every week for an entire year.
Absolutely.
that takes us to our backup. It's a bio of Animal Man, and it's drawn by the great Brian Bolland, who did the first 64 covers of the Vertigo Animal Man series, which includes the entire Grant Morrison run. Why would you get literally anyone else but Brian Bolland to do this?
Those covers are sincerely so iconic. There's so many of them that I want to buy as framed posters. Most specifically, I think the most iconic one is the one where it's Wile E. Coyote crucified on tire tracks.
Oh, come to my Barnes & Noble. They've got a big book of Brian Bolland poster art.
Yo, okay, I might have to cop that.
I'll pick that up for you if you want. I'll bring it over in lieu of a bottle of wine next time we have a Shabbos dinner.
Hell yeah, that sounds really nice. But yeah, Bolland, don't look up what he thinks about female cosplayers, but his art is excellent.
Yeah.
Just one of those fun things where a comic book artist or a creative professional in any field reveals themselves to be a weird crank once they get access to the internet.
Yeah.
Just sucks.
See also... I could do so many names here.
There's so many people.
Don't see also.
Don't see also. We just don't need to know this much about creators sometimes. I just wanted to enjoy his beautiful art. What makes it so beautiful is the dithering and the shading, I think.
Yeah.
Animals also, he has a real fidelity to like botanical illustration.
Yes.
When he's drawing animals, it really looks so cool.
It looks like a nature book. I love it.
I love it too. It really is perfect for the tone. And then when he gets freaky with it, it stands out because it's against all these hyper-realistic depictions of what animals actually look like.
So this story gives us the basic overview, courtesy of Mark Waid, of how Animal Man got his powers. He conveniently leaves out all the freaky Grant Morrison shit because I guess it's too much to get into in 2 pages. I don't blame him for that.
Yeah, like, then you'd have to write Grant into it. Also.
Imagine the first panel. Hi, Grant Morrison here. Let me tell you about Animal Man.
God, that would be a funny way to do it, but I appreciate doing it straight, you know?
Yeah.
Because the joy of reading Animal Man is reading it as it goes off the rails. Having that spoiled for you from the get-go, you're not even going to understand why it works until you actually read the whole thing in full.
And also, you don't even need that aspect of it for Animal Man to work. Jeff Lemire did an incredible Animal Man run in 2011, which doesn't even touch the metatextual aspect of him.
Yeah.
Just like treating him as this dude in a superhero universe is enough for a big story. And that, I think, takes us to the end of the issue.
Yeah. No, I think what makes Animal Man work when you're not doing the Grant Morrison thing is that humans are animals. So it has to be a story about life.
Right.
Yeah. So Lemire is very good at weaving small character moments, small moments of existential grief or crisis into large metaphysical stories about the nature of life. Like Sweet Tooth is just that, you know?
Yeah. Oh, God, Sweet Tooth is
Sweet
so
Tooth
good.
is fucking
Sweet Tooth.
Slaps, man. It's so good.
I picked up Sweet Tooth and I was like, I could not put it down until I literally got to the last issue.
Yeah.
It was such a ride.
It was one of those things where I picked it up as it was ongoing and it's like, I know I'm just going to buy all the trades. Yeah. So I will buy as many comics that will give me faith that it will continue coming out. And then I just have to read it all in one go.
I'm going through that with The Killer right now by Jacquemont and Matz. I've the French assassin comic that the Netflix movie was based on last year. David Fincher did the movie. It's incredibly good. And like this recording is basically the only break I'm taking between reading volumes of this. So,
dude, French bande dessinée, that whole tradition of comics, I don't know enough about, but every once in a while you read one of those and like they're on some other shit over there. It's crazy.
Oh, this is the one, Gita.
Dog.
The Killer. Write it down. This one is going to blow your fucking mind. This is a comic book for adults.
Have you read the French original Snowpiercer comic?
No. Oh, it's on my list.
It's very good. It is,
I'm sure,
devastating in a different way than the movie is. The movie hits all the same notes about society, culture, and capitalism, but the comic does it in such a French way where all you feel is deep despair. Like it makes you want to smoke a cigarette when you read it.
Oh, Oh, you're gonna love The Killer. It's so your shit.
It's so good.
Oh my God.
Also, the French comic that the M. Night Shyamalan movie, The Beach That Makes You Old, was based on is similarly extremely good.
Oh, okay.
I would love to know more about French bande dessinée. So if you are a listener and you want to just email us just for our own edification and like a reading list of stuff for me to get into, I'm so fucking down.
Absolutely, yeah.
You know,
yeah.
My mom tried to teach me French through 1010 and it didn't quite work, and then she also had to skip a bunch of them for being too racist. So
listen, Hergé repented, okay? He disowned those early ones. He's okay.
It's fair. It's like
he's an I used to be a real piece of shit guy. He grew out of it.
Yeah.
We can safely be fans of Hergé. We don't have to cancel him. What was your favorite scene in this issue?
My favorite scene is the one in the beginning where Daniel John Carter is talking about what a dirtbaggy is.
Yeah.
I love that scene. I love fictional dirtbags, as you must be well aware by now.
Mm-hmm. They're
It's making you laugh while you're thinking about it, isn't it? It's just where he says, and now I'm the 5th best salesman out of 6.
No, I'm thinking about Succession.
Oh, hell yes. Yeah, sorry. I'm not in love with any of the dirtbags here. Just time.
Oh my God. Yeah. My favorite scene is the supernova scene where he
really
just
good.
Absolutely no-sells Cassie. It's just hilarious to me.
Please respect my personal space.
It's not meant to be funny, but it's very, very funny.
The scene becomes funny to me because I can just hear in Cassie's head. It's like, she wears short skirts, I wear t-shirts. Can't you see? That's exactly what's going on in her head. Yeah. No brain cells, just you belong with me. Oh my God.
Yeah, that's absolutely it. You got anything for the Blackboard?
I do want to know the details of the bank fraud case that Weatherman got into. It's like, what were you doing? What form of bank fraud was occurring here? And why did he need to do this petty crime?
I have a personal philosophy that every person on Earth is allowed to do one Anchorman quote guilt-free as long as they don't make their whole movie their personality. And to this day, one of my vocal warm-ups is, the Human Torch was denied a bank loan. And that's kind of what I thought about in this scene.
Yeah, I think you're right about that. Anchorman is good and does hold up. It is, in fact, I think maybe the only one of those improv comedy, Judd Apatow style, big budget improv movies that actually remains funny to this day. And it's because it's just a bunch of bits. Like it feels like related to Airplane in that way, where it's timeless because it's people doing gags, and it's not trying to be like This Is 40, which is just really depressing to watch in a lot of different ways and not funny on top of it.
I'll never forget the experience of watching Knocked Up in the theater and thinking, why am I here?
That's so funny.
What brought me to this point?
Yeah, I had a moment. My parents wanted to see This Is 40 on Christmas Day. And I was like, please, can we see anything else? No, we had to watch that. We all walked out of that going like, well, that wasn't very funny, was it?
Yeah.
But we were talking about comic books at one point in time. So yes, I want to know but what the weather wizard, what business he had at the courthouse that day, why he was doing white collar crime. It's just that will be fun. I love the idea also that he was doing white collar crime in Metropolis just as like a backup grift if being the weather wizard wasn't going to work out for him.
I don't know what's going on with this guy. My Blackboard item is I'd like to call our attentions to the dates on the cover here. These are all little Easter eggs.
Oh, please. I was so curious what these dates signified.
Yeah. So it took me a while to untangle them, but we've got 1935, which is the year the first DC comic was published. New Fun Comics #1. 1938, the debut of Superman, Action Comics #1. 1939, Batman's debut, Detective number 27. 1941, that's Wonder Woman's debut in All-Star Comics #8. 1956 is Showcase #4, which is widely recognized as the start of the Silver Age with the debut of Barry Allen. 1985 is Crisis on Infinite Earths. 3006 is 1,000 years after this. So that would be when the Legion takes place. 85-271 is the date that DC 1 million takes place. It's a common misconception that takes place in the year 1 million. Grant Morrison's concept for DC 1 million was that if comics kept publishing from Action Comics #1 on, uninterrupted for the rest of time, what year would Action Comics 1 million come out? And the answer was that year, 85,271.
If you're wondering, also, dear listener, I think you could read DC 1 million without any of the surrounding context, and it's still a very good story.
Oh yeah, I discovered it in my neighbor's long box, and I didn't know anything else that was going on, and I was fascinated by it.
It's really, really good. If you read it in sequence with the rest of Morrison's Superman cycle, you see that they've been working on this narrative about Superman for like blah, 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 dozens and dozens of years. But reading it just on its own is really fucking good.
Yeah, the way it ties into even All-Star Superman is really interesting.
That's fascinating. It's absolutely fascinating. Yeah. That might be something that I try to write about at some point in time. The Superman cycle, like it's just Morrison had these specific ideas about Superman and Superman's iconography that they were working through several different narratives over a period of like a decade. And it's really interesting and very good. And it actually kind of works. It's like one of those examples of this long-seated narrative thing that they try to do. Doesn't always work. This one worked.
You ever read Final Crisis Superman Beyond?
No. Oh, man.
That is basically the conclusion of Grant Morrison's whole Superman arc.
Okay.
Like, deep within the recesses of Final Crisis, Grant Morrison buried a much better event than Final Crisis, which is this personal arc of Superman, like going up against this vampire monitor. That is easily the most interesting part of the whole event. And it ties into the whole Limbo stuff from Animal Man. It feels like a real culmination of literally everything Morrison was working on since the 80s. And I feel like as a Morrison fan, you kind of owe it to yourself to read that part of Final Crisis.
I gotta absolutely do that. Because the Batman run, and obviously Batman dying and coming back to life, that felt like more like a trial run for the more ambitious project of the Superman cycle. And I call it a cycle because they weren't able to do it all in one go like they did with Batman. But Batman, it's like, it's messy because not all the ideas are fully cooked. It's kind of still like dough in the center a little bit. Mm-hmm. But the Superman one, because Superman is such a symbol in and of it themselves of really specific feelings and emotions about America, about heroism, about humanity, and the responsibility we have to each other as other human beings. The Superman cycle works better even being so disconnected and so disparate. It really works to Morrison's strengths. Also, just because they write the hope aspect of Superman better than a lot of other writers.
Yeah, absolutely.
Sorry for that tangent. I just love DC 1 million.
No. Sure. I love Solaris, the Tyrant Sun. I love the Garth Ennis Hitman 1 million comic that takes the piss out of the entire event.
It's really lovely. I love Batman of the Future just being a prison warden, which is just 100% accurate about all of the problems with Batman, but also a thrilling story in and of itself, you know?
We got a few more dates here. We got Zero, which is probably a reference to 0 Hour. 5252, which is just duh, and 4006, which is, I think, a callback to the 41st Century teaser on the original Blackboard that Wade and crew never got around to doing, but we're still thinking about it this time. And that's all the numbers.
That's all the numbers. That's number wang.
That's all the numbers there are, which means all we need to do is go into our mailbag. It's time for us to answer the questions. This is the part of the show where we answer your questions about comics or pop culture or anything you want to ask us, which you can participate in by sending your mail into 52mailbag@gmail.com. I think we only have one question this week, and it's from That's So Revan, who asks, why are space travel stories usually so boring?
I actually have a theory about this.
Please, I knew you would.
Okay, space travel stories... I think they're similar to time travel stories in that so frequently you get bogged down in logistics, and that's not what stories are about.
No.
It reminds me a lot of the movie Looper, directed by Rian Johnson, written directed by Rian Johnson, where Bruce Willis and eyebrow guy, Joseph Gordon-Levitt, are sitting down and they get into a point where they're trying to describe the mechanics of how time travel works. And Bruce Willis is like, stop it. We're going to be here all day making fucking diagrams with straws. Just fucking get with the program. And like, that's the thing.
Which is very funny because literally that exact thing happens in The Flash.
Yes.
If you listen to our episode of The Flash.
Yes. You know, it's space travel stories, like Star Trek works very, very well because you just accept that the Federation works and is analogous to other stuff that we already know about in our actual world, right? Like, they're just like military diplomats. they're a military force that does diplomacy, but we understand what a military is. We know what a ship is. We understand that hierarchy. Star Wars sometimes gets bogged down in like, well, how do they do faster than light travel? Well, how do they do all this science stuff? Stop it. Just fucking stop. We don't care. Talk to me about characters and talk to me about what they're doing. The fact that they are in space is incidental.
Right. It's a space fantasy, Star Wars.
Yeah.
And when it remembers that, it's real good.
Yep. I have been going down into the Anakin Skywalker brain rot era a little bit.
Speaking of which, how do you feel about The Acolyte?
I kind of fuck with it, honestly.
I do too. I'm really into it right now.
I haven't watched the most recent one. There's as of recording, there's one out from there's the penultimate episode is out. I haven't seen it yet, but Manny Jacinto.
Oh
my God. Wow. Wowie zowie.
Yeah, Derek Bortles.
Bortles. Oh my God. Also, I did not realize that the actor that plays the guilt-stricken Jedi Master Soul was the lead actor from Squid Game.
Right.
He's fantastic.
And he learned English for this role.
He's amazing. He's amazing in it. It's really, really fantastic. It's apparently the showrunner has said that she wrote all of the characters with actors in mind, and if none of them were available, she would have just rewritten the script.
Right.
And we're so lucky that all the actors she wanted were available.
Another really cool thing is she said, we specifically got people for the writer's room who have never seen Star Wars before, so we can make sure that this works as a not Star Wars
My
thing.
husband does not like Star Wars stuff. We both watched the first 2 seasons of The Mandalorian, and we liked that. And then we tried to watch the 3rd season, and we're like, now this is all just about fucking Dave Filoni's bullshit, you know?
Yeah, it's all Clone Wars season 30.
Yeah, exactly. And like, we couldn't continue to go with it. We both like Andor, but the things we like about Andor are not the first 3 episodes or the last 3 episodes, but the middle 6, which are just about stuff unrelated to ongoing Star Wars conflict.
Yeah. Everybody loves a prison arc.
Man, the Amazon prison is such a smart idea. It's really, really, really is.
God.
And Andy Serkis just slays in those episodes.
Oh, he's so good.
He's so good. Again, Planet of the Apes, right?
Right, exactly.
Just one of the best actors, and he was doing it all under mocap CGI for so long.
Yeah.
But Star Wars is like a good setting. I think of it as like a D&D setting. Like, you should pick out parts of that universe to play in and not worry about the rest of the things. Too often, Star Wars uses, like, 52 is a good example of using fiction to solve narrative to solve lore problems. Because they end up not doing that, you know? Whereas I feel like a lot of bad Star Wars, like the parts of Rogue One that suck, are about using narrative to solve a lore problem. But I was never asking, like, who got Leia the plans for the Death Star.
Yeah.
She just got them.
Outside of the original trilogy, my favorite cast of characters in any Star Wars thing is the cast from the 2003 BioWare Knights of the Old Republic video game. And only years after playing that game did I discover that all of those characters are based on the devs' role-playing characters from their own Star Wars role-playing campaign. It's like, you know what? That absolutely tracks.
You know, and this is why people like Star Wars Visions so much, the anime shorts.
Oh, Visions rules.
You know, or it's like, oh yes, we do want a story in the Star Wars universe that takes these samurai fiction threads and forefronts them, right? We do want to see like a life or death battle of the bands in the Star Wars universe. We don't necessarily care about what's going on with the Skywalker lineage. I couldn't give a fuck, you know?
I don't care somehow Palpatine returned. I don't need to know how. I didn't even want him to return in the first place.
Exactly. It feels like the the iconography and the lore established in the original trilogy, to me, it feels clear that George Lucas was actually really not expecting any of this to ever cohere into something that made sense.
No.
And the more people try to make it cohere into something that makes sense, the less interesting it becomes. It's again like Grant Morrison's approach to comic book writing. You should just not understand some parts of it, because that implies that there's a world that's going on out there beyond these characters' control.
Yeah, I think the most telling thing I've ever read about George Lucas was that during the last season of Lost, he wrote this like long congratulatory letter to the showrunners where he gave them the advice that like, never let them know you're making it up as you go along. Always pretend you had a plan.
Hell yeah. Hell yeah.
Yeah.
No, I mean, for me, the key that unlocks Star Wars is going back and looking at the experimental cinema that he was really interested in and wanted to he wanted to follow in those people's footsteps. He didn't want to make big blockbusters. He made one by accident, and then he had to keep making them. But if you look at the stuff he was influenced by, you understand that none of this was ever supposed to make sense. It was supposed to give you a mood and a feeling, and it's very good at communicating those things.
Well, before this becomes a Star Wars podcast, which was literally something I decided not to do so I could do this podcast instead, I do have one more question for you.
Yes.
And that question is, are you ready?
What?
She wears short skirts, I wear t-shirts. Oh, God, they're going to sue me now. Yeah, this is Jaffe's version.
Pickup is an Aftermath production created by Gita Jackson and Alex Jaffe and edited by Esper Quim with original music by John Ahrens. The views and opinions expressed on this show are solely those of the show's personalities and do not reflect those of DC Entertainment or Warner Brothers. Please rate and review our show wherever you can and send your questions and comments to 52mailbag@gmail.com. Never stop reading comics.